Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Bridges and Tunnel Committee meeting for March. Do we have any speakers? No public speakers, okay. I like a motion on the minutes, last month's minutes, or last 2 months' minutes, just in case. Are there any questions on the minutes? No questions on any of the minutes, last month and this month? Okay, all in favor? Great, thank you. Okay, Susan?
Just before we get into the agenda, just a couple of items that I wanted to follow up with you on. One is, Andrew, I believe at the last meeting you asked about what the Port Authority might be experiencing in terms of traffic, and we looked into that, and the answer is generally that their rate of decline for 2008 was a tiny bit less than ours, but they're generally seeing the same trending down that we are. So there really wasn't much difference there. Then just a couple of other quick items on the Easy Pass back office cutover. Last month I reported that we had moved the Staten Island office, and this month I'm glad to say that we've completed the cutover to the new system. We had some problems with high call volume and some problems with the web, but they were addressed relatively quickly, and thankfully were relatively minor. So we're continuing to do tweaking of the system, but the big bulk of the work in the cutover happened. Also, I want to thank the Bridges and Tunnels staff and our great employees who helped me live through my first major snowstorm, which was March 1st to March 2nd. Our roadways were clean and open for the morning rush, and I want to especially thank Jim Ferreira, who was on the road by 4:30 in the morning checking our facilities and our employees. So thank you, everybody, for getting me through. Probably trying to shovel out his car. But another thing that's timely is potholes. I just want to tell you that we know that it's pothole season is upon us, and we're on top of it. We have 2 trucks that go out daily, and we have patrols reporting on what we're seeing in terms of potholes, and we're going to be doing timely repairs, weather permitting, but we do have issues with weather. The last item really quickly is Easy Pass on the Go. We did a press release last week soliciting further vendor participation in the Easy Pass on the Go program. The pilot had about a dozen vendors with 160 stores, mostly check cashing operations. And then since the press release, we've had an additional 25 vendors with 75 stores that are in the process of joining the program. No, we're expanding the pilot. That's how you know sort of the beginning of trying to do that and kicking it off. So that's the little brief summary that I have for you of things that are going on. With respect to the work plan, there were no changes. David is going to do the report on operations.
Okay, thank you, Susan. The report on operations begins on page 17. We've made some changes to the report this month. Those changes correlate to some of the presentations I've been doing since last May. On page 17, the first exhibit is one that's, I think, an old standby, which looks at year-to-year traffic. And as I reported last month, traffic for January was 21.9 million transactions, which was 1.7 million less than the prior January, which is 7.3% lower. We attribute the lower traffic to some heavy snow that we had in January, which we didn't have in January of 2008. Also, we know that the economy has gotten weaker since then, and also on a calendar basis, there was one fewer weekday, which also makes traffic trend down. Exhibit 2 on page 18 is a graph that we introduced last month, which measures average daily traffic using a 12-month rolling average. As I pointed out last month, we peaked an all-time high of 837,000 or so vehicles per day in October of 2007, but since that time Our average daily has dropped down to 802,000, which works out to about 35,000 or 4.1% less than the October 2007 high. That works out to about almost 13 million transactions a year fewer that we are now getting on that average. Exhibit 3 takes the 12-month average and begins to look at it by payment type. You see now the first Exhibit 3 is on cash vehicles. And what's interesting here is that you see there's a decline throughout the whole 2-year period, and it makes perfect sense because if you probably take this graph and start in 1996, you'll see a decline because people are converting from cash to EasyPass. So at the very beginning of this graph, there's a decline, and I would attribute that to the EasyPass growth. But then later on, yes.
Excuse me. This graph on page 18 would have lots more meaning if we knew that the free bridges also were seeing a decline. If the free bridges have seen an uptick, then that means people are shifting. And absent the DOT figures for the free bridges, we really don't know if this is cost sensitive or an actual decline in people making trips.
Well, we would like to see that too, but
How are you going to do that?
Does DOT, can you get any figures for the?
no.
What you would have to do is monitor it, but that's another expense.
Jeff, maybe you can ask Jeanette if she can give us some data.
There's 11 free crossings or thereabouts, and it would be nice to know if they're experiencing
Jeff,
declines.
if your DOT can put some counters out on the bridges, yeah.
You do it, I think, like, from what I understand, maybe once a year. But,
Yeah, but that's not
we have
gonna
not
help
been
us.
able to get that data
Yeah.
from DOT.
Yeah, once a year is not going to help us. No,
Right.
No, but if you put the counters down, if the city could put the counters down, because that might help with us, in our fight in Albany. What? Yeah, for tolling the bridges as well. That's again. But Jeff, after they put it down, they got to monitor it so that the rubbers don't come off, and it's done for nothing.
My guess is that they're probably declining as well. My guess is the Port Authority is seeing declining traffic too, and so I think that we all know intuitively that the economy is having an effect on traffic. But to the degree that Jeff can help us to get data from Jeanette, that's great. We'll be happy to provide it.
Okay. Anyway, on Exhibit 3, besides the conversion to EasyPass, what's also going on here is probably the decline in cash traffic when gas prices started to stay high around October of 2007, and now with the continuing decline in the economy, from end to end on this graph, traffic's declined, cash traffic declined by 7.5% over the 2-year period. Exhibit 4 looks at EasyPass traffic over the same period. And you can see that EasyPass traffic didn't start declining until November of 2007, and with a steeper decline beginning in April of 2008 when gas prices started to escalate last summer, and that decline has continued right through January with even a steeper decline from December to January. At this point, it's not really clear what may have caused that, other than we know that the weather was significantly worse this year than the prior year, so that may have been a factor here, but we'll keep an eye on whether or not that slope that deeper slope continues. On page 21, we graph passenger vehicle traffic, and traffic again peaked in October of 2007 and has declined by about 4.3% since that point in time. On page 22, we're looking at other vehicles, meaning truck traffic mostly. And interesting about the other vehicles here is that you can see it's a very irregular graph. It goes up, it goes down, but certainly it's peaked in April of 2008 and has declined since then. And there's been a steeper decline since November. Even though it went up in December, it's dropped considerably in January. So I don't know if that's a trend that we have to keep an eye on, but there's been a steeper decline in the last few months. And the last exhibit's on page 23. This table gives you the change in average daily traffic for different time periods and different catchment areas or corridors. So if you go down the left-hand side of the table, you'll see it starts with all facilities, and then it breaks out the traffic by the various crossings to try to give it to you by Bronx, Manhattan crossings, Verrazano. and then it breaks it out by toll media or payment type. So if you were to look at all facilities, total vehicles, you can see that when you compare January to January, it went down 7.3%, which is what I reported earlier. If you compare the 3-month period, November to January, to the prior 3-month period, November to January, traffic declined by 4.8%. And likewise, going across, you can compare a 6-month period to a 6-month, 9-month, and a 1-year period to a 1-year period. And if you can work left to right or right to left, you can see how things have gotten significantly worse as you get further to the left, from right to left. Traffic decline has gotten higher than it had been. Also, on the Manhattan crossings, you see that a large decline in Manhattan crossings, 10.8% decline, and a very large decline in Easy Pass traffic in January. Again, it could be somewhat weather-related. It could be employment-related, too, knowing that the economy has gotten worse. Then the last 2 pages are just data that we use to put the graphs together in case you need more specific information. It's provided to you there. And that's the report on operations.
Okay. Don?
Our Easy Pass performance report for January 2009 begins on page 27. For January, our Easy Pass market share was about 74%. That's down slightly from the previous year. Transactions for Easy Pass were down about 8%, consistent with what Dave just said, reflective of the lower traffic during that month. Also this month, we're starting to report on Easy Pass on the Go numbers. Those are on page 30. You'll see that there were more than 900 on-the-go accounts that were opened in January. This represents about 12.5% of the total accounts that were open for the month. And since the program began, we've more than 16,400 on-the-go tags have been sold.
How many stale?
Pardon me?
How many stale?
Well, it's kind of a moving target, but I think more than 80%, I think. At least the last numbers I saw, more than 80% are open. I'll double-check that for you, though. If there's no more questions on Easy Pass, I'll move on to the financial report for January that begins on page 33. It's a brief report for January. Toll revenue for the month was just about on target, about $94.6 million, about 0.5% off the budget. Total expenses were $2.4 million lower, primarily due to the timing of expenses in the maintenance and other operating contracts category. And for the month, total support to mass transit was $54.2 million, which is about $3.6 million better than planned.
At what number or at what continued rate of decline, let me put it to you that way, does our contribution to mass transit get affected?
Will get
I'm not
affected.
sure how to answer that.
I mean, right now we're on
Right.
target,
Right.
relatively speaking, on revenues.
Right.
So to the degree that revenues tank further, either expenses have to get adjusted.
Right.
Or there'll be less money for
Because the mass transit number is the end number,
Correct.
not the middle number.
Correct.
But if revenues go down and expenses, even if they stay the same,
There'll be-
revenue to mass transit will go down.
Yes.
Right. I mean, right now our revenue, at least for January, was pretty flat against the budget. So.
Right.
Which is what year over year?
Pardon me?
Which is what year over year?
The-
You said it's flat against the budget.
Well,
year
it's
over
kind
year.
of hard to compare revenue year to year because we had a toll increase in March of 2008.
Right.
So it's, yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
and remember, what happens is as we go through the financial plan through the year and they do the financial plan updates, this gets updated. I mean,
Right.
toll revenue actually was adjusted
Right.
both in the November plan and
And
both
the
in
July
July
plan.
and November.
right.
So this moves around throughout the year of what the contribution to mass transit will be. So right now, we're on target, but something that I think we'll go through,
Right.
as the
Especially if
year
we
goes
see
on.
continued
Right.
decline.
Right. We significantly lowered our revenue last year, both during July and November, our
Right.
revenue budget.
Right. Okay.
Okay. Is that it for the financial?
That's it
Okay.
for the financial. I'm sorry.
Tom?
Good morning. We had a quiet February. We committed 5 tasks with a cumulative value of $1.6 million. That brings our year-to-date total to $3.8 million versus a plan of $8.3. In February, we did successfully bid one of our 2 major projects that are planned for 2009. Project TB59 will rehabilitate an existing building located on Randall's Island. Bridges and Tunnels will relocate personnel presently working below our plazas into this building to allow future reconstruction of the plazas. The low bid was $63.7 million, and it was slightly below our estimate. The award of the construction manager contract for this project, which was planned for February, is in process and will be awarded shortly. We've had no completions this month, and none were planned. However, our yearly planned completions for 2009 will set an authority record total of $491 million. 8 tasks were closed out in February with a value of $21.3 million, bringing the yearly total to 21.6. And that's my report. If anyone has any questions? We're changing that.
We are. We're
The
changing
computer
that.
hasn't caught up yet.
On the procurement agenda, there's 4 this month that total $3.2 million. One is a non-competitive procurement, which is with the City of New York, not to exceed an amount of $1 million to provide traffic enforcement agents to control traffic on city streets adjacent to our construction projects on an unneeded basis. Do we want to vote on the non-competitive?
Let's do it, the non-competitive. Any questions? Simple. All in favor? Aye.
There are 3 competitive procurements. The first is a personal service contract with Tripport in the amount of about $120,000 to provide maintenance and repairs of our aerial truck and freestanding lift equipment, as well as inspections and certifications. The second is a modification to a miscellaneous service contract with Alps Mechanical in the amount of $1.9 million to exercise a 1-year option to renew services for maintenance and repair of heating and ventilation and air conditioning systems at our facilities. And the last item is a modification to a personal service contract with Hardesty in Hanover in the amount of $185,000 for additional construction, administration, and inspection services for repair of the maintenance platform traveler at the Verrazanos. And there's no... Go ahead. You want to vote?
Any questions on competitive? None? Okay. All in favor? Aye. Okay.
There's no ratifications. There are 3 multi-agency procurements that are not on our agenda, 2 of which were taken up this morning at the Long Island Railroad Committee meeting. One, and I just want to make you aware of them here, and obviously they'll be on the board agenda. One is a sole source multi-agency contract with Oracle for consultant services for management, configuration, implementation, and support of Oracle products and training. Our share of that contract is $1.285 million. And the second is a multi-agency request to ride an OGS, a state OGS contract for UPS to provide as needed domestic and international package service delivery, which is in the amount of about $313,000. There is also a multi-agency procurement that's on Transit's agenda for a contract with ELOT Electronics Recycling for the removal and disposal and recycling of obsolete computer and electronic equipment, and we will be contributing $27,000 over the next 5 years for that multi-agency procurement. So those you'll be voting on at the board level. Andy, do you want to do the safety stats?
Yes. Good morning. We have the 2008 year-end safety statistics. On page 61 is a chart, customer vehicle accidents with injury statistics, listing the number of vehicles and accidents and injury accidents and injury rate per million vehicles for 2007 and 2008. The 2008 rate of .95 is the lowest that we have recorded so far. On page 62, then, is a graph of those frequency rates of customer incidents with injuries per million vehicles. The last 10 years' rates are plotted with a dotted line showing the 10-year average. And the graph showing a downward trend. We have on page 63 a chart of the monthly employee lost time accident statistics. It shows the number of injuries and the total hours worked and the frequencies for 2007 and 2008. And we had a slight upturn in injury rates from 2.5 to 2.9. As you can see, the first 11 months were nearly identical to the prior year. We had the 13 in December, which we feel was an anomaly. An analysis showed that they were mostly slips, trips, and falls. So we've geared our 2009 program. One of the pieces of it is a Back to Basics program. We've done a site visits, myself and VP Operations Jim Ferrara, and making visits to discuss the program to all facilities, and I think we've shown some early results of that. In 2009, we've had one injury in January and one injury in February. And on page 64 is a graph of those frequency rates of employee lost time incidents for the last 10 years, and again with a dotted line showing the 10-year average. That's all.
The last item on the agenda is the annual procurement report, and this year, every March, we're required to do this, and this year it's being coordinated through Linda Kleinbaum and through headquarters, so the board's going to be receiving it separately, but it's for contracts that exceed $15,000, excluding public works contracts. So there isn't anything for you to act on or to do at this meeting. And then just one final thing that I didn't report on, but I wanted to offer my congratulations to Jim Ferrara and Don Spiro, who have moved from being actors in their roles to being permanent. Don's now he's been acting for 2 years as CFO, and he's now the CFO. And Jim has been made, I know, well, it just happened, so we need to change that. And Jim is now the VP for operations. So I just wanted to let you know and congratulate them.
And my congratulations as well.
And that's it.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, we'll see you all next month.
Thank
you
you
very much.